Hare Krishna. So we can begin, I guess. This is, again, thank you very much for joining today's class, Sunday morning. I know it is early for some of you who have several services on the weekend, but thank you again for joining. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Payuryamasya mitrasya parimokshasya narada himsaya nirtir mrityor nirayasya gudam smita. And I'm going to read the next verse as well, and then we'll do the translations and take it from there. Parabhutera dharmasya tamasaschapi paschinaha nadyo nada nadinam cha gotranamaste samhati. So I'm reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 2, Chapter 6, Texts 9 and 10. So I'm reading the translation of Text 9 now. Translation is, O Narada, the evacuating outlet of the universal form of the Lord is the abode of the controlling deity of death, Mitra, and the evacuating hole and the rectum of the Lord is the place of envy, misfortune, death, hell, etc. Synonyms: Payu, the evacuating outlet; Yamasya, the controlling deity of death; Mitrasya, of Mitra; Parimokshasya, of the evacuating hole; Narada, O Narada; Himsaya, of envy; Nirteha, of misfortune, excuse me; Mrityu, of death; Nirayasya, of hell; Gudam, the rectum; Smritaha is understood. Once again, the translation is, O Narada, the evacuating outlet of the universal form of the Lord is the abode of the controlling deity of death, Mitra, and the evacuating hole and the rectum of the Lord is the place of envy, misfortune, death, hell, etc. Moving on to the next verse, verse 10. Parabhute, of frustration; adharmasya, of immorality; tamasaha, of ignorance; cha, and api, as also; paschina, the back; nadya, of the intestines; nada, of the great rivers; nadinam, of the rivulets; cha, also; gotranam, of the mountains; asti, bones; samhati, accumulation. Translation for text 10 again. The back of the Lord is the place for all kinds of frustration and ignorance, as well as for immorality. For from his veins flow the great rivers and rivulets, and on his bones are stacked the great mountains. So I'm going to read the purports now. For the first verse, text 9, there is no purport. So for text 10, purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Prabhupada says, in order to defy the impersonal conception of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, a systematic analysis of the physiological and anatomical constitution of his transcendental body is given here. It is clear from the available description of the body of the Lord, his universal form, that the form of the Lord is distinct from the forms of ordinary mundane conception. In any case, he is never a formless void. Ignorance is the back of the Lord, and therefore the ignorance of the less intelligent class of men is also not separate from his bodily conception. Since his body is the complete whole of everything that be, one cannot assert that he is impersonal only. On the contrary, the perfect description of the Lord holds that he is both impersonal and personal simultaneously. The personality of Godhead is the original feature of the Lord, and his impersonal emanation is but the reflection of his transcendental body. Those who are fortunate enough to have a view of the Lord from the front can realize his personal feature, whereas those who are frustrated and are thus kept on the ignorant side of the Lord, or in other words, those who have the view of the Lord from the back, realize him in his impersonal feature. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Gnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Sri Guruve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Davati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Uttapadakamalam Shri Gurum Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Saradatam Sahagana Raghunathan Vitam Tamsa Jivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Deva Shri Radha Krishna Chaitanya. I blacked out. Let's go back again. Vancha kalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhya vicha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. The mind has its own ways of behaving, and it's never always in our control. So I think I humbly accept that. Thank you once again for joining us on this Sunday morning. And it's very important, as we will read and discuss as we go through these two verses, how important it is to have the association of the devotees, and how important it is to glorify the Lord, and how important it is to discuss topics of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna. So just as a backdrop, and again, I've mentioned this in my previous class as well, where we spoke about how Canto 2 of the Srimad Bhagavatam deals with three major topics: the yoga processes, the universal form of the Lord, and the creation. So chapters 1 to 3 of Canto 2 deal with the yoga processes, and chapters 4 through 7 deal with the universal form of the Lord. And then chapters 8 through 10 deal with creation and take it beyond, and they talk about the philosophical basis of the Srimad Bhagavatam. So in this chapter, Lord Brahma is answering questions asked by Narada Muni regarding the universal form of the Lord. Excuse me. So a few days ago, Radhakunja Bihari Prabhu was discussing a text, as we've been discussing throughout this chapter. And my question to him was, Prabhu, what are the takeaways one should have about the description of the universal form of the Lord? And how should one process the descriptions given about the various components of creation and how they relate to the universal form, right? Because we all have this analytical bent of mind, and we've been conditioned in a certain way through our education and our exposure to life over the years. So for us to be able to relate to the universal form of the Lord is one thing, and then being able to relate to how the creation took place and how that relates back to the universal form is another thing. So that was my question. And I thought for this class, I would spend a little more time, because I wanted to meditate a little more on, what that could possibly mean, and, and how that could help all of us in developing that understanding and make it a little clearer. So I'm making an attempt, so please bear with me. as we get through this, because this is my thought process and based on what I've been reading, especially, the teachings of Lord Kapiladev have been a major driver for, my understanding on this particular topic, over the last few days. So I'm going to be presenting some of my thoughts from that view, and there could be many other, views as well. But this is something that resonated well with me, and it kind of gave me the understanding, a much better understanding, I should say, of how to relate back to the transcendental and the universal form of the Lord. So one of our dear devotees, Balram Prasad Prabhu, said that one way to look at it, as we were having a lot of good discussion, Balram Prasad Prabhu, among other points, mentioned that, one way to look at this is also that, the jiva is, we can say that the jiva is a victim of the external energy. It's the overwhelming and inexhaustible energy of Maya that's completely taking us over, right? So we're so burdened with this external energy that it is close to impossible to think of the Lord 24 hours of the day, every day, right? And to be able to, and we need to do that to be able to go back to Godhead, is the understanding, right? So it's so difficult. And if you think about it, it's a very valid and a pragmatic question, right? Especially in the day, in this day and age, and the lives that we lead, the busy lives that we lead with work, with family, and with everything else that's going on, it makes it extremely, extremely challenging. So we live in this world where we have to work so hard, and we have to work literally like donkeys to put a little food on the table, and to have a shelter over our heads, and to have some clothing on our bodies. We work so very, very, very hard. These needs seem, when you look at these needs, they seem to be so little and so fundamental. But when you seriously think about it, right? Yet we endeavor and endeavor and endeavor and endeavor like there's no end, right? And are we that foolish? I mean, if you think about it, are we that foolish that we don't understand what this means, right? All we need are these three fundamental necessities: food, clothing, and shelter. Roti, kapda, or makan, right? So my good friend, and again, Ritu, who was also my classmate at Kellogg, she posted recently on Sadhu Sangha, which most of you may have seen. It was a funny message, but it also struck home, a note, a message, which kind of resonated in my head as well, which was about, it had a picture of all these massive satellites pointing to the sky, and a caption that read, "Have you ever noticed all the instruments searching for intelligent life are actually pointing away from the earth?" So I thought that was funny, and I related that back to what we're discussing today. And I was, I'm beginning to ask that rhetorical question: if all we need are these three basic necessities, are we humans really that foolish to endeavor so much, right? So while it is true that many of us as devotees would like to go back to Godhead, it's not because we want to escape this madness that we experience here in this material world, but rather the aspiration and our inspiration should be that we want to be in the service of the Lord. And therefore, there are, though there are 5 types of liberation, without getting into the details, the pure devotee is not really interested in liberation from the cycle of birth and death. Mama janmani janmanishware bhavatad bhaktir ahituki tvai. That's what we hear, right? So my dear, the devotee is saying, my dear Lord, I do not want to put an end to this endless process of birth and death. I'm not anxious for mukti or, nirvana. And let me go ahead and take birth again and again instead. Simply let me engage in being in your service, birth after birth after birth after birth. That's the sentiment. That's the feeling. That's the emotion. And that's the aspiration that the devotee holds in his heart. Now, impersonalists or Mayavadis believe achieving liberation means merging, but that is just merging into the Brahma Jyoti, right? Or the effulgence of the Lord. They simply don't believe that there is anything beyond that, right? All they're thinking is that there is this big glob of energy, which they consider to be, the supreme. And their vision and version is that, their understanding is that one should merge into that because everything is coming from there. But what they don't understand is that there is nothing but the Brahma Jyoti. It is nothing but the effulgence of the Lord, right? And there's a lot of detail in the Bhagavatam which is given about even the effulgence. Even that effulgence is still a shadow. It's just a small glimpse of what is actually coming from the Lord. And imagine that in itself is so bright that people can see beyond it, right? So therefore the effulgence, so the prayers of the devotee are that, this effulgence or the veil of effulgence is removed so that the devotee can see the Lord and the real form can be revealed, right? Now, the impersonal folks, the Mayavadis, don't believe that there is any form, no personal form of the Lord, right? The impersonal, in fact, the impersonalists will say that the sun, for instance, is nothing but a fiery planet, right? But Krishna specifically says in the Bhagavad Gita, that he spoke the Bhagavad Gita to Vivaswan, the sun god. Now, the Mayavadis will argue that, no one can go there. It is too hot. You'll die. Your body will just melt on entry and so on. Now, just because we cannot go there doesn't mean that there is no life there, right? Now, we cannot live in water, but does that mean that there is no life in water? There are so many, like the oceans, right? There are so many aquatics. There are thousands and thousands of species. In fact, scientists, even till today, are discovering new species, ones that have never been recorded, that exist in the depths of the ocean. And these are depths that we're talking about, miles that go down into the ocean where, there are frigid temperatures. It's so cold. And the pressures are so high that they can crack our tough skull like a bubble of air, just like that. And not just that, but there is absolutely no light. It's complete darkness. And even there, they're finding, and they haven't gone all the way down to the bottom in many places. And even at those depths, they're finding, aquatic creatures that are living and multiplying, and they obviously are able to sustain life even at that depths and even in those terrible conditions, right? Which are completely impossible for us. We need special equipment to even go down to that depth. So the mundaners are more or less captivated with the unlimited expansion of the rays coming from the Lord. But the devotees, on the other hand, are concerned more with the personal form from which everything is emanating. Janmadi asya yataha. So as the sun's rays are concentrated in the planet, right? When I say planet, not planet, but the star in the sun, the Brahma Jyoti similarly is concentrated in Goloka, which is the topmost spiritual planet in the spiritual sky. Now, in the Atmarama verse of the Srimad Bhagavatam, we learn that even elevated personalities that are completely renounced, that have no attraction for the material things, like Sukadeva Goswami and many others, even they are attracted to the personal form of the Lord. So that says a lot, right? So can we really say that Krishna is formless? No, because I mean, we're talking about these elevated personalities that are completely free from, any kind of material attachment or material desire or anything like that. But yet, even they are attracted to the personal form. I mean, these are self-realized, renounced personalities. But even they are so attracted to the personal form of the Supreme Lord. So the other thing that comes to mind is also, the Mayavadis. They will also never declare that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of the Lord. I mean, they can be, prolific orators. They can recite the scriptures left to right, right to left. They can do all of this jugglery with words, and they can impress the masses of people. But they will never, never, never declare Krishna as the Supreme Personality of the Lord, right? And their thinking is always, how do we, take the demons, for instance. Let me just step aside and, talk about some of the Asuras, the demons. They're thinking about Krishna, but they're constantly thinking about Krishna in an inimical way, right? So they're thinking, oh, how do I kill Krishna? Kamsa, for instance, was constantly obsessed with the thought of, or the intent to kill Krishna. But again, he wasn't thinking of Krishna as a Supreme Personality, but he was thinking of Krishna as this young boy who was a threat to his life. Similarly, Hiranyakashipu, he was hell-bent on, killing Krishna. So we see that in subtle forms even today, and so are these prolific orators that I just spoke about, right? There are people who can speak, who can orate, who can quote from the scriptures, and they pretend to be experts on the subject matter of scriptural references. But what they fail to do is to accept that Krishna is the Supreme Personality and that he has a personal form. So the common man is very easily bewildered, right? I mean, they're hearing these fantastic references from the scripture, and it's coming out so eloquently that, they think that is it. So they believe that, what is being transmitted to them in whole. And they take that in and, swallow it in whole. So they too are completely confused and they're completely detracted. But even Lord Brahma, if you look at it, when I say even Lord Brahma, I'm saying that Lord Brahma, an elevated personality, is glorifying the Lord in the Brahma Samhita. He has verse after, sloka after sloka after sloka after sloka, where he's glorifying the Lord's personal form. In fact, he says, Venum kvanantam aravinda dalayataksham barahavatam asitambuda sundarangam kandharva kotika maniya vishesha shobham govindamadi purusham tamaham bhajami. So he's saying Venum. So Krishna is playing the flute. He's giving the description of Krishna playing the flute. And not just playing the flute, but his eyes are like the blossoming lotus petals. Aravinda Dala. So that is, he's comparing the eyes of Krishna. So he's describing the eyes, the beautiful eyes of Krishna, to the lotus flower. And when he says that Krishna is playing the flute, that playing of the flute and the music that's emanating from the flute, the sound, the vibrations, is so attractive that it is drawing even the gopis from their homes at night. Now, from a material sense and in this material world and according to the material norms, we're thinking, hey, why are these chaste women, married women, leaving their homes at night, entering the forest just to see Krishna, But then, they're doing it all for Krishna with a spiritual inclination, a completely pure, uncontaminated intention to go. They're so attracted to Krishna, and that is how they're expressing their love and their rasa in a spiritual form, completely spiritual. And since they're doing it for Krishna, there's nothing material about it. That's a very important takeaway, right? The other important takeaway that we're talking about is that, Krishna's flute is so attractive that it is drawing even the gopis that are married, and it's at nighttime. They're taking the risk of facing the aftermath from their husbands, from their families, from their community, right? And they're entering the forest, and you know what the dangers are, potentially, right? And this is happening at night. It's not even during the daytime. So they're doing all of this just to go and spend time and be with Krishna, be in the association of Krishna, and being able to serve Krishna. And that's how beautifully, Krishna is playing the flute, and so attractive. And then his eyes are described as blossoming lotus petals. I mean, you can only close your eyes and imagine how beautiful that must be. And then on his forehead, he has the peacock feather, baraha, which is the peacock feather. And it says Ashita Ambuda. Ashita Ambuda means the translation is that his figure is imbued with the color, or the tinge of the blue clouds. So even that is described, not just the beauty of his figure, but the beauty of his figure, that is, the coloration, the skin. It's like a tinge of the blue clouds. And the beauty of his figure is so overwhelmingly attractive that it attracts not just Cupid, but millions of Cupids. Kandharva Koti, Kamaniya Vishesha Shobha, right? So that is Brahma, Lord Brahma, this empowered creator of the universe, who is glorifying the Lord's personal form. Now, on the other hand, if you look at the impersonalists, the Mayavadis, they imagine, all forms of the Lord in different ways. They say, you can imagine Lord any which way you want. For that matter, they even accept the forms of the Lord in the temple as idols, right? So to a devotee, they're not idols, but they're deities, right? But for the impersonalists, for the Mayavadis, they're looking at it as a piece of wood or a piece of stone, right? Or a piece of metal. And that's why they call them idols. And so that's how, they impart the same message to the masses. And the masses, I'm sure you would have come across a lot of these experiences, whether it is among friends or family or others, where say, oh, you have an idol of Krishna in your house, or you have an idol of so-and-so in the temple, right? So these Mayavadis continue to argue and completely detract the common man, making it even more difficult to make any advancement in terms of going back to Godhead. In fact, in chapter 12 of Bhagavad Gita, Krishna clearly says, Kleshodika taras tesham avyakta ashakta chetasham avyakta hi gatir dukkham. So he says, Klesho adhikataras. That means Klesho it's very troublesome. And it's adhik, meaning it is excessively troublesome. And and the translation goes, for those whose minds are attached to the unmanifested, impersonal feature of the Supreme, spiritual advancement is very troublesome. So this is why these, and Krishna says this is why impersonalists or the Mayavadis they're constantly struggling with this, because they're in their mind, their whole concept is this formless, impersonalist idea of the Supreme Personality. And therefore, they're not able to engage with the Supreme Personality, and therefore it takes them much longer. But Krishna says, eventually, even they will come to me. What to speak of the people following such impersonalists and such Mayavadis? Something to think about. Now, on the other hand, devotees, like I said, devotees don't worship idols. Devotees, in contrast, worship the Archa Vigraha of the Lord. Now, Archa is that form of the Lord that Krishna makes himself available in for us to be able to worship him in our conditioned state, right? Because in the present state, we don't have the eyes to be able to see him or see his spiritual form, right? Because our material eyes and senses simply cannot deal with a spiritual conception. So we have to be eager to engage with Krishna. It is the loving devotional service that allows us to, engage directly or, through the spiritual master with Krishna. And this in turn gives us the transcendental knowledge that is required. So Krishna gives us the transcendental knowledge that is required to be able to come back to him. As Krishna says in the Chaturshloka verse 10:10, where he says, Bhajatam, Tesham Satata Yuktanam, Bhajatam Priti Purvakam, Dadami Buddhi Yogam Tam, Yenamam Upiyantite. Right? So I give you the knowledge, when to those that are completely absorbed in me and, are devoted to me and worshiping me, I give them the knowledge by which they can come to me. Krishna is clearly saying that. Now, in our completely materially conditioned state, so we are Nitya Baddhas, right? And as Nitya Baddhas, we're so conditioned that we are completely forgetful of the constitutional position that we are actually Brahman. In fact, the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says that Brahma Bhuyaya Kalpate. So he says we are parts and parcels of Krishna. But because we're materially conditioned, we're completely covered there. We're covered. And therefore, we are in a state of forgetfulness. But at the core of it, we're still, we are the Brahma or the Brahman, right? And so this forgetfulness is what causes the jiva to be completely enthralled and captured by, this overwhelming external energy, Maya. Now, there are different classes of devotees. We have, the Uttamadhikari, you have the Madhyamadhikari, you have the Kanishtadhikari. And Srila Prabhupada says that even the Kanishtadhikari, who is a neophyte, even he can attain liberation. The Lord is so kind that when he sees, someone coming to him with the utmost love and affection and, genuine appreciation or sincerity, right? And eagerness. So for instance, if a Kanishtadhikari were to pay obeisances or even offer, a garland or fruits to the deity in the temple, Krishna and the Archa is able to receive that, recognize that and receive that. And he is so, so unconditionally he gives himself even to the Kanishtadhikari. So Srila Prabhupada says that, you don't have to be the Uttama Adhikari. You can even be the Kanishtadhikari, but it is that eagerness, that sincerity with which we open our hearts and we give ourselves to Krishna and we surrender ourselves to Krishna, right? Even that is accepted by Krishna, even though we are in such a materially contaminated state. So what to speak of the Uttama Adhikari, right? Now, Lord Kapiladev, in his discussion and his advice to his mother, and and in his response to his mother Devahuti, because Devahuti has all of these important questions, Lord Kapiladev also says that when the pure devotee sees these charming and attractive forms of the Lord, the devotee loses almost all consciousness and gets completely absorbed in thoughts of Krishna. And in doing so, he's completely freed from any material attachments. And there may be other material desires, those also fall by the wayside. It's like when Lord Chaitanya, when he entered the temple of Jagannath, when he saw the deity of Jagannath, he lost consciousness. He was, almost lost consciousness. And he was like, this is my Lord, this is my Lord, this is my Lord. And then he faints. So, when we hear things like that, we understand, and not that Lord Chaitanya was by any means, he's the Lord himself. He is not a Nityabadha by any means, right? It is us who are materially conditioned. So what Krishna is saying is that even in this materially conditioned state, just by getting attracted to the forms of the Lord, just by hearing those beautiful pastimes of the Lord, we can also get into, be attracted to the Lord, number one, and two, be able to sustain that. And when we do that, automatically, everything else starts to fall aside. The material energy itself starts to rearrange itself. That's what our preceptors tell us, our acharyas tell us, that the material energy itself starts to give away or give way, so that we can then, make spiritual advancement. We can then get closer and engage with Krishna. So there's a very important verse in the Srimad Bhagavatam, again in Canto 3, and I will read the translation. It says, in the association of pure devotees, discussion of the pastimes and activities of the Supreme Personality of Godhead is very pleasing and satisfying to the ear and the heart. Okay, the heart, hrit, karna. So the heart and karna, the ears, right? By cultivating such knowledge, one gradually becomes advanced on the path of liberation, and thereafter is freed, and his attraction becomes fixed. The real devotion and devotional service begin at this point. So the attraction has to be fixed before we can even say that, hey, we are engaged in pure devotional service. We are all engaged in services, which is great, right? But by definition, a devotee is pure. By definition, devotional service is also pure. So we can only aspire at this point, I can speak for myself, that my stage of pure devotional service hasn't begun yet. I'm only able to offer services, but that should not discourage me. That should, in fact, give me the impetus to improve my intensity of services to a point where my attraction for Krishna is not only building up, but it stays fixed. Fixed in the sense it's only getting stronger. It's not getting weaker, or it's not transient. Once my attraction is fixed, then I am in a state where I can actually offer pure devotional service. So going back to my question, and again, I'm looking at the time here. So going back to my question about how one should process the description of the universal form of the Lord, here are some important takeaways. And then we can open it up for discussion. So first and foremost, the Lord has a personal form. And in his original form, he is the all-attractive, and that's Krishna. The Lord's universal form is meant for kanishtas and non-devotees. Why? To anchor their faith, on the understanding that Krishna has a personal form. So that's the second one. The third one is to do with our forgetfulness. Our forgetfulness is what causes us to become so overwhelmed by the material energy, Maya, right? And therefore we lack the attraction. So the fourth point, through the association of devotees and proper hearing, one can gain the attraction for Krishna, right? And fifthly, it is when that attraction, I mean, through that attraction, one becomes absorbed in Krishna, and we're constantly thinking about Krishna. And when we do that, our attraction becomes fixed. And when that happens, our senses are freed. We are, freed, meaning freed from material engagements and material desires and whatever other material attachments that we have. And instead are focused on the lotus feet of the Lord. And that's when true and pure devotional service begins. And once you're in that state, perfection of life is already in place. As I said earlier, the devotee doesn't really desire liberation from this cycle of birth and death, right? It's more about engaging oneself in service. So as Prabhupada says, that this can be Vaikuntha, he says, right? Even this material world. Why? Because if you're in a state of service and in a state of pure devotional service, that is, we are constantly engaged with Krishna. And so then, we are completely freed from these material attachments. We're also, not paying attention to the dualities that Maya imposes on us, or the modes of material nature, or, they impose on us. But instead, we are in a state where we can actually focus on serving the Lord and derive a lot of happiness and satisfaction. So the soul becomes so joyful, getting back to its constitutional position. The constitutional position of the soul is service to the Lord. So stay in the association of devotees, constantly hear and chant. Right, so these are the reasons why Srila Prabhupada also has given us these regulative principles, which are so beautiful. Just by staying in that, even the sadhana bhakti that we're doing, the practice itself is so uplifting. And that practice eventually will get us to a state of purity where we can spontaneously engage and stay absorbed in Krishna. So we don't have to worry about or think about or analyze the universal form, but keeping in mind that Krishna has this beautiful personal form in, as a cowherd boy in Vrindavan, for instance, that can keep us, on track. So with that, let me open it up for discussion, see if you have any questions. And again, these were thoughts that came to my mind. I thought I'd share with you and have some discussion. And like I said, if you want more detail, please read Kapila Dev's teachings to his mother, Devahuti. They're completely very, very enlightening, and they're focused on devotional service. It is only through devotional service that one can go back or get Krishna's attention, go back to Godhead. The question is, how do we stay in, a constant frame of mind to be able to perform this pure devotional service? We are not even there where we can call our devotional service pure. So how do we get to that point? And so that's what prompted this whole thing for me in my mind, and how that could be related to the transcendental form. And with that, we went through this discussion. So let me open up a few minutes that we have to see if you have any questions, any suggestions, comments, feedback.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Guru and Gauranga. Thank you for the, wonderful, sweet, nectarian discussion on Srimad Bhagavatam. Now, as usual, when you come, there's a lot of details, and you make it seem so easy for us to digest. It's almost like a banana peeled and put into your mouth. So,
But I hope it's not a raw banana, Prabhu.
No, Prabhu, even the choice, the choice to make it so good that these are all very sweet, and and the takeaway
Very kind.
Yeah, the takeaway, was really good. I was trying to wrap my mind on the entire thing. Like, what happens is every time we read some of these verses in these cantos, it's a little too much overflowing to even, try to pull something out of it. So, you putting all of those into that nice takeaways is wonderful, and like you said, we are not, at least I am not in a stage where I can call anything that I do is devotional service. I always remember one Bhagavad Gita verse, that is 9.7, 9.27. Yat karoshi yad ashnasi yad juhosi dadasi yat tapasyasi kaunteya tat kuruta
Krishna.
mam. Whatever you do, whatever you eat, whatever you offer or give away, and whatever austerities you perform, do that, O son of Kunti, as an offering to me. So, what I do is always second thought. It's not coming from deep within my heart, But that's what you were saying, keep doing, at some point of time, Krishna will reveal it to you, and then you will start doing it. Thank you so much, Prabhuji. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Prabhu. Thank you for that encouragement and very kind words. And this is actually what you quoted is one of my favorite verses, and in fact, the verse after that also is very, very important and very, very. It actually connects and takes us to the next step, which is Shubha Shubha Phale Revam, like Sannyasa Yoga Yuktatma. So Mokshasya Sannyasa Yoga Yuktatma. So that verse also tells us that by completely staying away from being indifferent to auspicious or inauspicious things, being focused instead and doing everything as a service to Krishna will help us get liberated. And in this case, like we spoke about, liberation for the devotee is entirely different than the five types of liberation that is quoted in the scriptures. So thank you again for that. Thank you. It's also the conversation that we had a few days ago that actually prompted a lot of this. So
Yes.
I need to thank you for that, and thank Balram Prasad Prabhu, and then yes, Vinod Bihari Prabhu also brought up some good points in terms of being the personal form and so on. So it was a very enlivening discussion, but that prompted a lot of questions in my head, and I went back and I said, let me learn a little more about what all this means. So thank you.
Actually, all the credit for that goes to Mukunda Prabhu, because he was supposed to do it that day, and he couldn't. And we all jumped in and we had an open discussion. So
Yeah,
credit goes.
I think we should have more of these open discussions, Prabhu.
Yes,
It's good.
Prabhuji.
Makes us think. It's provocative and very, good for us to think.
Yes, Prabhuji.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions? Anything else that you would like to discuss? Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Yeah, thank you so much for a nice class. You tell like everything like a story actually, the philosophy. So thank you so much. Mike, quick comment, Prabhu. I mean, I think you mentioned about what is a liberation for a pure devotee, right? I mean, it's not going back. I mean, going back to Godhead. I mean, that is one way. But the other way, I was hearing Prabhu. I think a couple of days back. Uh, Achieving Krishna is not the, I mean, should not be the ultimate goal even for the devotee, because achieving Krishna is even the demons achieve, right? I mean, like they were always able to get Krishna. So, but I think you mentioned it nicely, the service, right? The service is the one they wanted to do in a favorable way. So that, I mean, because even the devotee gets that even in this world, so that's why we hear pure devotees doesn't want to even, they don't care where they go, right? So I mean, it doesn't matter wherever they get the service, they're happy there. So otherwise, why? Like, I mean, of course, I mean, the great devotees who came to this world to teach us, why would they come? So thank you, Prabhu, for this point. So my quick question is about the. I think you mentioned about first two cantos talks about creation and a few other yoga and all, right? I think that's
Correct.
three points you mentioned. So Mike, I don't know, Prabhu, if you heard any time the first canto Prabhupada titled as creation. So, but actually, if you hear lot second canto and third canto talks a lot about creation, right? Than the first canto. First canto, I don't think much about anything about creation there, other than those incarnations and all, right? In the second chapter, or third chapter. So, I mean, do you have any comments on that, Prabhu?
So what I've heard from my Guru Maharaj, our Guru Maharaj, Prabhupada Swami Maharaj, His Highness, I mean His Holiness. What I've heard is that that the first two cantos are basically a summary of the entire. If you look at it that way, when you read the first two cantos, they kind of summarize the entire Bhagavatam, the essence of the Bhagavatam are in these two first two cantos. And within these cantos, there is, again, the subject matter is repeating itself in ways in which, we can understand, get a much better, clearer, deeper understanding of the subject matter. So this, while creation is discussed in Canto 1, it is discussed in Canto 2, and then again it is discussed in Canto 3 as well. When Vidura meets Maitreya, and Vidura is asking Maitreya all these questions, beautiful questions. When Vidura is on his pilgrimage, he meets Maitreya, and he's asking Maitreya all these questions, and Maitreya again discusses, the whole process of creation and so on. So yeah, so the subject matter is repeated. I don't know if that answers your question, but basically it is covering and reinforcing the subject matter, so that our understanding becomes a lot clearer as we go forward.
Can I say something? Add to it, Prabhuji?
Yes, Prabhu.
Prabhuji, if you're really seeing, we understand that Krishna is the primary creator and Brahma is the secondary creator.
Mm-hmm.
If you look at first canto, we are hearing about how in the spiritual world the Lord is there, and how he takes the different expansions, and from those expansions all the way up to Brahma Jyoti, it's all described. And even we hear a little bit about the Kshirodaka, Karana ocean and Kshirodaka Shayu ocean and all those things. So that is all the primary creation which the Lord is doing, which is explained in the first canto. If you get into the second canto, more details are given, because now we are going to read and learn how Brahma is going to do the creation. That's the second canto. That is why it is known as cosmic manifestation. He's taking what is given to him, and it's not just the raw material but also the knowledge, and using that now we are learning about the secondary creation of individual universes. We are not finding out how multiple universes are being built, but one particularly in this case our own universe, how that is built, and how the bodies are assembled. How without the Lord being there, these bodies cannot be assembled, because it's his Maya Shakti which does it for for Brahma. So I think that is the reason. It's very subtle the way it's named. I also pondered on it a little bit, but I think that is why they are named the way they are named, Prabhuji.
Excellent. I mean, again, you explained it in a way, articulated in a way that it helped me also very much. So yeah, it is, as we make progress in going from one canto to another, and that's why Prabhupada also says, don't just jump to the canto 10, for instance, because we are not going to have the proper fundamental understanding. Whereas from canto 1 onwards, basically we're building our understanding to a level that it gets deeper and deeper and gets clearer and clearer, right? So like you said, it starts with the primary creator, Krishna himself, and then the empowered secondary creator, Lord Brahma, and then going from there. So it's basically building on that. So thank you so much for sharing that and articulating that so well. Awesome.
Thank you, Prabhu. Nice.
Very nice. Anything else, Prabhu? We have 2 more minutes.
Dandavat Pranam, Prabhuji. All glories to Srila Prabhupada.
Hare Krishna. Please accept my humble obeisances, Prabhu.
I had a different perspective. It's we're always thinking about supposed to be a Krishna Das, Nityara Krishna Das. But actually our mind is Kamsa Das. Okay. Supposed to be a Krishna Das, but mind says become a Kamsa Das. That's what a few days ago Chandramali Maharaj was telling.
Very nice. Unfortunately.
So between our consciousness supposed to be, and then the Kamsa, which is the mind, on my aspect. So this is a fight between every day on how this our consciousness is being overtaken by mind, and then we know, oh no, intelligence has to take care of this, we can't do it. That means we are building up the platform to solidify our understanding, and then follow the instructions and follow the rules and regulations. First of all, rules and regulations, and then keep going in our life to practice Krishna consciousness every day. So the aspect of, since you are telling, so you gave so many details today of what that primary or secondary, it's all, first of all, I was thinking how Krishna glorifies, he was not in picture. Of course, he is the one, everything he does, but he glorifies the devotee like Brahma. But see what we are and where we are. For example, who was the Jagannath Puri? Who inaugurated Jagannath Puri temple? It's Lord Brahma, right? But look at what happened to Lord Brahma in the form of Haridas Thakur. There was no entry for him to the Jagannath Puri temple. Even though he is the inaugurator for the Jagannath Puri, he has no entry into it because he was in a different form. That doesn't mean the people, if the people understand that Jagannath, this Haridas Thakur is Lord Brahma himself, then he that is his own thing, but he has no entry there. So what I mean to say is, our mind versus our consciousness, it's fighting between every day that if I become Krishna Das, I have an entry. If I become a Kamsa Das, there is no entry. So it's a struggle between every day. How do I get there? How do I get there? So I had this question. I am not there yet. How do I get there? This is, generally everybody has their thoughts. But you brought a nice point that whether you are a Kanishta Adhikari, you said actually, initially the Kanishta Adhikari has to know this material form so that he will understand the greatness to move forward and become a Uttama Adhikari in his consciousness, slowly, gradually, etc. So my understanding was, I'm not there yet, but it's too far for me to get there. But the understanding, if you really see, whether you are a Kanishta, whether you are a Madhyama, whether you are a Uttama, everything starts from Bhakti Yoga only. So what do we have is the strength of Sarvadharman Parityaja is there. 1866 is there as a broader terminology for all of us, but we are not there yet. That's how people say, I don't think I am there yet, so I have to do this. No, we are all there in the sense. What is the process is Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu Smaranam, and then Srimad Bhagavatam every day, which will solidify our consciousness to become Krishna Das. In that way, whatever strength your degree of surrender, that means your strength of surrender solidifies every day here into this, and finally become Krishna Das and solidify our consciousness to surrender to the Lord just by the same process. There is no other process. You don't have to become, some people say, what happens, generally, I am doing this, but I'm following Krishna consciousness, but I'm not there yet. Maybe I should go to astrologer and see ask him what to do. Right? So, and then, I'm not there yet. Maybe I should do this yajna. I'm not there yet. Maybe I should also do this. No, not required at all. Just the holy name. Just the holy name. But as you said, the satellite example, what you gave, right? I was thinking, even though we are all here, you took it in, you explained in a very nice way, but I was thinking in a different way that even though we are there, our consciousness is to look for Golokera Premadana Harinam Sankirtan, which is coming from the spiritual world. If that comes in to our consciousness and take that, imbibe our consciousness in that holy name, even though we are here, it's just like, the lotus flower is in the water, but it will never, even the water droplets won't stay there. It's always pointing fresh, as long as you're in the consciousness of Krishna. Like that, even though we are here, our mind as a Kamsa doesn't matter. You just point our consciousness towards the Golokera Premadana. And then every day that solidifies, and whether you're a Kanishta or a Madhyama or Uttama, whoever, of course, we'll come to the stage, or all come to the stage of that. And then we can solidify every day by this amazing Krishna Katha. Every day that, just by listening all this. That's all, Babu.
True, very well said. Absolutely. I mean, it's all there, Prabhu. It's simple, but we even take the simple and make it complex. That's the problem.
That's what. That's why my mind. That's why I was talking about the mind.
We are very complex animals. That's how, and we work from the mental platform.
Logic. We look for more of logic also. How this happens, how that happens.
Exactly. No. True, Prabhu. Thank you.
Thank you, Prabhu.
So we just need to tune our antennas, as you said, in the right direction, spiritually. That's it.
So that, if I may speak a few more minutes,
yes, please. If everyone's okay, I'm fine.
You actually raised a very good point when you were talking about the discovery of species deep within the sea and all those things. What was coming to my mind is, again, in the previous chapter, while reading, one of the points Prabhupada makes is that everyone gets a body that he's desiring and deserving. And the fun part of it is, not only do we get that sort of body that we deserve, when we go in there, we are made to fool by the illusionary powers that we are the master, no matter what body we are in. Whether you feel that you're like Alexander when you're a human, or you feel like, like even in the form of a crab or a fish, you still feel that you're the emperor of the world. That is the fun of Maya, So
true.
That's the
very true. Very, very true.
And the second point you made, was about, that meme that was sent around, and I wondered about it a lot, that machines looking for intelligence, it's not humans or some other intelligent form looking for it, but it is machines, the height of science, So,
that's a good point. That's a good point. Yeah. No, I didn't even think about it that way. But no, that's a fantastic realization there.
What you said, bro? Machines, sir?
Satellites, no? Yeah, the machines.
Okay.
Yeah. So okay.
Awesome.
I wanted to say something. It just passed. That's fine. Okay.
It may come back. We'll leave the lines open. I mean, this is not the last class, right? We're going to have many more discussions through the week as well. So, but Lakshmikant Prabhu, thank you so much for giving me this opportunity, and to all of you on the call, for bearing with me and tolerating me. I know Lakshmikant Prabhu has been having a lot of challenges, especially with all of these holidays, vacations, people forgetting, not intentionally, but by accident. But it still happens, and especially with the busy lives that we're dealing with, it's always there. But Lakshmikant Prabhu is always there to remind us and bring us back on track.
Thank you, Prabhu, for that.
Thank you for that. Thank you. With that, we can close the class if there's nothing else, if there are no other questions or comments. But thank you very much again. Vancha kalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhu bhyevacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Gaur Premanand.